What is up, guys? Welcome back to another Mindbender Friday. I'm so excited to get into this episode. This is going to be episode number 2. I'm actually recording this on Thursday, so this is actually being recorded ahead of time. I know. Look at me. I'm actually pre-recording videos like a normal YouTuber. But today's episode, just like I mentioned in the first episode last week, as well as how the next couple of episodes, probably the next month or two, will be, as they're going to be primarily focused on just me talking, asking questions, and putting my own ideas, my own theories out there. And then going forward, there'll be more and more essay style videos where I'm actually going to be working on doing research, because I don't know if you guys know this or not, but psychology is really freaking complex, and so it's been really hard for me to find good sources to kind of learn this stuff, because there's not a whole lot of options that are very simple anyway. So without further ado, let's hop into it. In today's video, I have just a couple theories that I want to toss out, some quotes I want to go over, and just kind of rock with it and see where it kind of goes. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is this quote from Carl Jung. I hope I pronounced his name correctly, but he says the word happiness would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. And I found this surreal when I first read this, because it immediately made sense, and I immediately agreed with it, which was the most interesting part of it, because I wanted to do this episode mostly on sadness, as it is a personality trait, or a psychological trait that I've been dealing with a lot more in my adult life. The last 2.5, 3 years, I've been in some of the saddest mental states I think ever in my life so far. Ever since my relationship with my ex happened a couple years ago in college, and then I left college, and it's been kind of just downhill after that ever since. It's just been, obviously, if you guys have been around the channel for a long time, you guys know exactly what happened back then, and that kind of those accusations and the events of those days and those weeks and that month, just affected my psyche in a way that I wasn't really prepared for, and am now paying the price for. Um, and so sadness has been something that I've been just constantly thinking about. It's a big reason why I've gotten into Hallmark movies, because there is a balance between sadness and happiness that kind of resonates within how my own psyche is currently. Um, which leads us to a topic in this video, a thing I want to talk about. But the thing with this is, through the word happiness will lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. It makes sense, and I think it's a realistic thing. I think he's absolutely nailing it on the head, because if you think about it, the only reason we feel happy is because we're not sad, right? You could even flip it on its head, though, because like, you're never really truly sad if you're happy, right? I mean, if you're never really happy without sadness, or you're never really sad without happiness. So this really can go both ways. But I think it's very interesting that we don't really get taught as a young age to, especially men specifically, how to deal with um, sadness. Sadness is a thing that I feel like we all, specifically men, but obviously every gender experiences as well. But I can only speak from the perspective of a man, obviously. But it's something that is, I wouldn't say frowned upon, because it was never really frowned upon in my family, at least, sadness. But there was an unspoken thought of not allowing sadness, right? To be a man means to be sturdy, to be strong, to be reliable. Um, and obviously, me being a history buff, I'm very interested in history. I've seen throughout history the ideologies that have been pushed on men for the last couple thousand years, being the ideology of like no crying, no talking about your feelings or emotions, go to war, fight for your women and children, and save them, protect them, make sure they have financial support, house, etc. And I just think that it's a very it's one of those things where I'm trying to, as a human being, just get better at acknowledging my brain and how it's feeling, as well as acknowledging not only my brain and my heart, but I think psychology. From my experiences with the topic and going into it, the soul really doesn't come up all that much in psychology because it's mostly focused on the head and the head chemistry. But I think psychology, it involves emotions. You're talking about sadness, happiness, love, pain, loss. You're talking about things that involve biology and things that involve things that we yet to understand, not understand, and it involves things of other forms like addiction, serial killers, um, and all the other type of suicide and all the other things that are involved. I know YouTube's not gonna like this video, but it is what it is. It's the truth. But I think in a weird way, I think psychology should almost focus also on the soul as well, because whether or not you believe there is a being, a superior being, or multiple superior beings, or whatever the case may be, I think we can all agree that there is a soul in some form, an essence of who we are that is so eternally deep within us that we may not quite understand it. Majority of us will never understand it, I don't think. But for those who have been in tune with it or are learning to be in tune with it, which is what I am trying to do as an adult, is just trying to get in tune with my soul, and I'm trying to listen to the soul as it speaks, because there has been so many just thoughts that I've had that only feels like someone is almost speaking to me through it through me. Like it's the weirdest thing, and that's what's got me so interested in understanding the brain, because it just doesn't feel like it's something. Like it doesn't make sense to me as an adult. Um, when I was younger, I was never really into dating or any of romantical stuff. I was a war boy, man. That's all I was when I was a kid. I was all about war and history and stuff like that and video games, as you guys obviously know from the channel. But in recent years, there has been a feeling in my soul that has yearned for connection with another human. Now, there is a side of the coin that has would say that this is a biological thing, something that is just ingrained in me as a human being, or as a creature. Because at the end of the day, we're just animals. At the end of the day, right? Humans and animals, we might be called humans, but at the end of the day, we're just a part of a food chain, right? Some point in Earth's future, there will be a time when we are the bottom of the food chain or something. But I also believe there is a deeper, more real thing happening um, that is not related to biology. It's a more deep, real, maybe more of a um, aura. I guess is a good way to put it, maybe. Um, but that's just my thought on it. I think that there's reason to look there, and I think that's what we're going to be doing a lot in the series, and on these on Fridays, is really talking about the soul a lot, because I think that's a really interesting thing. And I'm looking at this from, you can look at this, I'm looking at this from a little bit of a religion perspective, but not very much. You can look at this from a non-religious perspective as well. I mean, there's every religion has some form of soul, and even I believe even atheists, people who don't believe in religions, or Scientology people, I even believe that they probably also most likely will also believe in a religion, or in a soul, because I just think it's just something that is easily explained for us as humans. It helps us explain a lot of things. Happiness is a very wanted feeling, but often isn't given. This is something that I wrote down, I coined when I was looking at that Carl Jung. I hope probably I'm pronouncing his name right. But when I was looking up his quote, I thought about that. The thing with happiness is temporary. This is something a lot of people don't quite, I think, get, and I think it's why a lot of people get comfortable when they're happy and they begin to kind of relax. And so when things go wrong, they blame it on something. They blame it on another person, or they blame it on a creature, or a country, or a flag, or a god, or a no god. Um, they blame it on something because that happiness is gone, right? It leaves. But the thing is, happiness isn't permanent, right? Because if it was permanent, there would be, um, it wouldn't be humans. We wouldn't be human anymore because we're not perfect, right? We go through the emotions, we experience different things, we have different outcomes of different events. And so I think that that's a huge reason why happiness is such a thing we want, that we will do anything for, but we also will do everything to keep, but we will always lose it. I mean, simply look at this, okay? Think of it like you're married to someone, you meet your soulmate, right? They're the person that you connect with on such a deep theological level, to the point where you guys are in tune with everything. You are happy, but you are also mad, right? You have fights, you argue sometimes, you disagree. Well, even in that case, right, you're not always happy. The happiness does leave. It comes back and it goes away, and comes back and goes away. But it's never permanent. And I kind of feel like that's kind of the point of humans is to kind of experience both sides of the coin, happiness and all the other emotions that are underneath that main emotion, and then sadness and all the things that are underneath sadness, right? Like pain, anger, frustration, confusion, etc. Um, but that's just my take. But I mean, or for example, there's this thing that happens in life where people find the one, as I say in quotation marks, if you guys can see me right now, um, where people believe that they can find the one. They're supposed to marry a specific person that has been destined to them by God or by their soul, whatever. But then something happens, and their person dies. Either be the wife dies, the husband dies, whatever. Um, and then a year or two later, the person who's been left widowed, um, finds another person to be romantically involved with, and then they once again feel they have found their one. It is something that I have been seeing in movies, as well as I have been thinking about that from just people I've interacted with over my life who have lost someone, found someone, etc. And it is very interesting because they all believe they have found the one, even after the one that they thought was the one had died or left their life. So it's very interesting how we are so easily able to be confident in the decisions that we make and the choices we make. We are so confident. Yes, I'm going to marry this person. This is my person that I was meant to be with. And then a year or two later they die, or whatever many years they later they die, and then a couple years after that they are already starting a family again, right? Starting that process over again. It's very interesting. Most people try to stay away from sadness. This is a huge thing. People try to just get away from sadness, but you can't. Then the thing with sadness is we block it off for so long. I am victim of this constantly, and I'm still doing it. It's something I'm working on, and it's hard. And that is being okay with the sadness and welcoming that sadness in, because fighting this when sadness happens, right? You fight it sometimes. You'll try to make yourself happy all the time. You'll be smiling and trying to make jokes, and basically what you're doing is you're just slowing the sadness down and making it pile up like a traffic jam. Okay, I think it's a perfect. Actually, I'm a genius, bro. That's a perfect reasoning for it, right? You got a highway, and when the highway is moving as normal, right? There's cars moving, no stopping. That is a normal emotions, right? You get some road rage once in a while, you get some sadness, but most of the time you're trying to just chilling, kind of happy, whatever. But there's an accident on the road, okay, and the road is now blocked on part of the lane. So it's a 3-lane road. Now 2 lanes are blocked. Now everyone in those 3 lanes is now squished into one lane, and they're making their way slowly but surely to the other side. That is what you're doing with sadness. You're blocking it off. You're causing road jams to try to slow it down, to try to fight it off. But I believe that we should be fighting with the sadness and allowing it to come into our lives and work with the sadness, because I think sadness is one of the best teaching emotions, in my opinion, out there. Because happiness teaches you what you like, um, and anger will teach you what you don't like, but sadness will teach you the ways to fight through it, right? Talk to anyone who's had depression. I've been suffering from a self-diagnosed depression for years, since high school, and I can tell you for a fact that um, some of the saddest moments of my life have taught me to have resilience in more cases than not. Because there has been days where a lot of days that I have woken up and I just didn't feel like going anywhere. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to literally just not wake up. I wanted to just die in my sleep and call it a day. But those days that those things happened and those thoughts came, the sadness was there, but it was almost as if it was a um, hand in the darkness saying, "Come fight." And so I feel like a lot of us make the mistake of trying to get rid of sadness and block it out, but really you just have to work with it and learn from it because it's there. I believe it's there to help us in the worst, in a worst way possible. It's there to help us. Um, Savea said this. He quoted this saying, "We suffer more in imagination than reality." Now, I think, like I was saying with the sadness and blocking it out, this is another thing, right? Our imaginations are so freaking good, bro. It is scary how good our imagination is. I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I used to have the most insane imagination on the bus going to schools when I was in high school. Like, it would be insane. I would have entire lives just on a bus ride, listening to some music, looking out the window on the ride. I would have entire like hero, villain, storylines in my head. I mean, maybe I was just extra, imaginative as a kid, but I mean, I've always kind of been a little bit. But when we are alone in our own mind, we are capable of thinking and playing out such insane fantasies or unfantasies, nightmares almost, or just normal things. Maybe asking out someone that you liked. You can play that entire experience out. You can ask them out in your imagination, marry them, have kids, die at an old age together on a tropical island. It's insane at the abilities of our mind, right? Is our we're so able to just make up an entire story, a book, right? Like a trilogy of books in a single car ride. You can imagine that. Yet we can't seem to do that in reality. We can't seem to just allow ourselves to react to those emotions in reality, right? You see a girl, ask her out. You see a food that you never had before, you want to try it, try it. These are all things that we think about, right? But we never really take those chances in reality because we have programmed ourselves to know that the consequences of these actions can be greater in reality than in our imagination because our imagination's blocked oftentimes by our own denial from allowing those things to happen, right? So if you're imagining a hero situation, right? You're in school, someone's doing some stupid shit, and you want to save the school, right? That is something that you can think up in your brain as a hero. There's a terminology for it that I can't pinpoint off the top of my head right now, but this idea of becoming stronger than yourself, becoming a superhero. Um, but there's obviously no way to do that in real life. Or in real life, there's consequences. You may get hurt. You may die or may get someone else hurt in that process. So it's a lot harder to do things in real life. And I think there is a limit to it, but I think a lot of this can be practiced upon. Talking to people in public. Don't be afraid to approach people. Don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to fail. It's a really good way to just break down those barriers of imagination because imagination's great. It's one of my favorite things. Right? I love sitting in my room, playing video games, listening to music, watching YouTube videos, and creating new stories every day. Either that be with my books, or with history, or with videos for you guys, with video games, with series for the channel. There's always this constant want to create something, and I think this is. And not everyone is creative. Some people aren't, and that's perfectly fine. But I do truly believe the majority, about 90% of people, are all super creative, right? Like, it's very rare for me to, and personally, to see someone who is truly just not creative. Because even if you have the worst stories ever, you are still creating something. You are still creative. You are still trying to invent something, right? Um, like even in like Hollywood movies, right? Everyone bashes Hollywood movies sometimes for how bad they can be, but they were creative. They envisioned something and they did it, right? They were able to accomplish that vision. So that is kind of what I'm thinking on that. Now, there's something else, another side of this video that I wanted to talk about, and it's a more of a interesting story because I just watched a movie on it. It was a Hallmark movie of all things. Now, I know some of you guys in the comments are probably gonna be like, "Man, you're watching Hallmark movies, bro? What's wrong with you, bro?" The thing about Hallmark movies is they have a unique way of communicating emotions because those emotions are predetermined. But those emotions are predetermined by people who have felt real emotions in real life who are trying to represent those emotions to you through a story. For example, there is a husband and wife by the name of, my phone turned off. Let me pull them up real quick. Chris Dempsey and Heather Krager. There is a movie for them based on their life through Hallmark, and it's basically how Heather Kroger wanted needed a liver transplant. Chris Dempsey, former U.S. Marine, he saw this, overheard or saw the announcement, went and was a match. But the story progresses where they become close. And then they obviously they go through the transplant, it's a success. And then in real life, they end up getting married and having, I think they're adopting, I think now, because I did read up a little bit on their life. Um, but the interesting thing of it all, and they said this in the movie, and I thought this was so insanely well done, was there was a scene in the movie where Heather, the young lady that needed the liver transplant, had mentioned to her sister in the movie that she couldn't decipher the feeling she was feeling from gratefulness from the transplant from the liver transplant, or if it was true love all along. And I thought that was a very interesting question because oftentimes people will talk about this, right? People and firefighters, police officers, and medics and doctors sometimes as well. But firefighters are huge with this. They will oftentimes they actually have names. They develop names for these people that become romantically involved with people who have saved their lives. And it's very interesting because you would think, looking from the outside, you would think there's nothing wrong with that, right? If you save their life, they feel indebted to you, but so they start getting emotionally involved. But we become dependent on things that help us, right? Drugs, alcohol, tobacco, things that help progress us through tough times, right? You have stressed out at work, you start smoking. It helps you. It holds your hand as you go through the journey. Whether or not it's good or not really doesn't truly matter at the end of the day because it's still helping you, right? People who smoke cigarettes know that they're going to probably get lung cancer or have some type of mouth cancer, or they're going to get some type of diseases from maybe poorly made cigarettes or the chemicals put in. People who do drugs know the drugs are going to harm them down the line, right? You do cocaine, meth, heroin, LSD, any of those types of drugs, you know there's a consequences for doing them. But you still take them because they help. Alcohol. Alcoholics drink alcohol to feel better. And it causes them to have issues with their families, with their kids, with their wives, husbands, etc. But they still drink. Because the human mind is so wants to be addicted to something, right? I mean, addiction is like the number one thing in the world right now. I mean, you get addicted to porn, gaming, television, reading. Some people get addicted to reading, addicted to certain foods, addicted to eating weird things, addicted to making out with your car, like that guy on TLC. There's a million trillion things to be addicted to because that's what the mind wants. The mind wants to be addicted to something. It wants to find something that constantly is feeding it dopamine and serotonin. It wants that constant fulfillment of those needs. And so in these situations, what happens is, because of the fact that the person, let's say a firefighter, saves the life of a young woman, for example, um, they become attached. She becomes attached to the firefighter because she feels this connection, this bond that was formed in fire, right? And this is actually a really common thing with military personnel overseas. You will often see this with men being they have a deeper bond. They call it like a brotherhood. Um, you can see it probably if you have family members that have military backgrounds, especially if they're combat veterans, because obviously there's a difference between veterans and combat veterans, because if you're a veteran but you've never seen combat, you may not have that bond like someone who's been in combat before, right? You know, being in a trench line fighting for your life with somebody is a lot different than sitting back at base doing exercises and deliveries. You know what I mean? There is a difference. It's no disrespect to either one, but there is a difference, and it's important to acknowledge those differences. But anyway, these bonds are formed that are so deep and so personal and so real that they become addicted to that bond. And that not always is a negative. If you look back in history, there's people who have military bonds, for example, who have are obviously not, it's not ruining their life, but in some cases it can be harmful. And I think what's very important in this movie, because and none of the critics mentioned this either, and I thought this was a super underappreciated scene, because the movie was well written, was well directed. All Hallmark movies really are. In the end of the day, a lot of people hate on them, but there truly are some great, phenomenally executed movies. I mean, there's a reason they're such a successful company in general. But that scene was so good because you could see the emotion in her eyes. You could see that the love was there. But you could also see how someone being rational would think the same thing. Is this real love, or is it just the hero syndrome, as we're going to call it for this video? There is a word for it, but for the life of me, cannot remember. Um, but it's so interesting because that's something that happens in real life. It happens with cops and paramedics as well as not just firefighters. I guess that happens with military personnel. And it can happen with everyday human beings, right? Like Heather and Chris. Now, obviously, everything worked out in the end for them in real life and as well in the movie. They got married and are living happily ever since 2016. But it is still just a fascinating thing because for for us to have that connection, that bond with somebody, it's fulfilling and it makes us happy. But there's also sadness, anger, confusion, disappointment. There is loneliness, which is a huge, huge thing. I know loneliness and sadness consume me as a human. It is something that it consumes me. When I am not making videos, when I am not playing video against my friends, um, those are two thoughts that consume me every day. It has caused me to not make good content sometimes because I just can't focus. It has caused my writer's block for the last year almost now. I haven't written really at all in the last 6 to 7 months. It's been a rough time because of those thoughts, the thoughts of sadness and loneliness. And there's a difference between obviously loneliness in the sense of like spiritual loneliness, physical loneliness, and romantical loneliness. There's a difference in all those categories, right? Because I'm not physically lonely. I live with my mom, I live with my dad, I have a dog, I have friends that I talk to in the game system. So it's not, and I have family members that are around that I go help with or hang out with. So it's not like physical loneliness. It's and obviously I'm pretty religious, so I don't really have spiritual loneliness, but there is that romantical, the romance loneliness, the love loneliness, that need for somebody that is on a different level compared to everybody else around, right? Because that's what it is at the end of the day, right? Especially when you are young, right? It's finding someone that you have a bond with, that you rock with on a deep level that is not necessarily family or friends. And but because of these thoughts, we oftentimes we get so confused and we get so frustrated, and we block everything off. But these are real thoughts that everyone has. At least I think. I like to hope that I'm not the only one out there feeling these things. And that's why I think it's important for us to take into account things like this movie, right? Because even though love or connections or bonds or whatever on these movies, it's all fake, right? It's all, except for the ones that are obviously based on true events, like the one I was just talking about. But in the grand scheme of things, they're all fake, right? Majority of these movies are fake. They take place in fake universes, fake stories, fake people, whatever. We all agree on that. But I think they have a fantastic place in dealing with people who are struggling, and I think that's where like the Hallmark genre movies, which is like Christmas romances, regular romances, whatever, like city girl comes to the country, meets a country boy, falls in love, that type of stuff. They have a unique way of communicating human emotions in a psychological setting, but in a more easy to eat dinner, if it makes sense. Um, Watching a war movie is very straightforward. Bad guy versus good guy. Good guy wins, hopefully. Lots of guys die in the middle of the movie. Maybe a romantical character that you love, that loves him, that is going to help him power through at the journey. Pretty simple stuff. But or in other movies, you may have a movie that's all about pain or all about love, right? Because it's all about love. They're getting married in the movie, and it's a great journey. But the thing with like these other style movies, the ones I've been talking about, like Hallmark style movies, is they're not as paper cut as they normally would. Some movies get complicated. Some movies have both parties already have someone that they deeply love, and then they meet, and there's like this tornado of emotions because now there is not just two people caring about each other. Now there's four because there's two on each side, and now there's this divide in the emotions. But you also will have sadness, maybe a lost loved one, or it'll be about a veteran coming home and dealing with immense amounts of sadness. There was a movie that I watched a little while ago. Um, for the life of me, I cannot remember the name, but it's like In the Valley of the Light, I think it's called. But it's basically about a World War II veteran that comes back to um, no one. He comes back alone. Like the immense fortitude of that is so rough. Like he came home after serving his country, and his dad died while he was overseas fighting. His brother is locked up in a jail and he's not getting out for a while. And so this young man now also lost his farm to some other couple who had took over the farm after the parents' death, and he was overseas, so the farm fell on them. And so he has no home, he has no family, he has no romantic interest. And so he just starts wandering. He wanders around states and roads, fishing at local areas, and it's a truly, there's so little words that he speaks throughout the beginning of half the film, but you feel the energy because on a deeper level, you people like I don't know how about other people, but for like people like me who are suffering, we may not have been through the same events as him, but we can feel that emotion, that feeling of just an empty room or an empty house or having an achievement, accomplishing something, and not having someone to share that with, or to have someone to lie on, to have someone to lean your head on, to hug, to any of those things, right? And obviously he does find the widow, and him and the kid and her hit it off. It's great, it's whatever, and then it's happy ever after at the end of the movie. But that beginning half was so powerful because he didn't have to speak a lot. He didn't have to. And even the people around him were very simple. Like they would say, "Hello, how are you doing?" They would have small interactions. A lot of them, all of them, pretty much would find out that he's military. Um, and obviously, World War II being the war that it was there was not a lot of words to describe anything. And so it was just a very strong and powerful moment. That is the beauty of those Hallmarky movies, man. They have the ability to transcend emotions that we are confused about. I will say this. I stress everyone that watches this video to find 3 or 4 movies that are Hallmark-based movies. They don't have to be Hallmark specifically. There's tons of other industry movies like that out there, especially like high quality, like Hollywood, full-blown Hollywood movies with like A-list actors. But find 3 or 4 sit down one a day, watch them through for a week. Just watch a couple of them. Go into it with an open mind. Don't judge the movie off of how it's written, like for story wise, and don't mind the production value because those things are always going to be kind of on the flip side for those movies. But focus on the thoughts that these characters go through, the events these characters go through, and it either becomes sadness, happiness, anger, confusion, um, uh, uncertainty, and break it down. And you will be pleasantly surprised how shocking it is of the situation that they go through. Is how similar it is to you in your everyday life. Now, the thing about uh, Mindbender Fridays is it's all about getting people to be comfortable talking, right? This is why I'm doing this. Not only is it important for me because I want to learn more about psychology, it's something that I have recently just become fascinated by. I mean, I've always thought psychology is cool, but like recently has really just became almost therapeutic to learn about. But this is also a way for you guys, especially my men out here that are struggling in deep, real ways like I am. It's the world is unfair, and there is a lot of pressure on us to be successful, to be attractive in every possible way, to be funny, to be kind, to be patient, to be reliable. There's this pressure to be perfect for everybody else. And we're just not made that way. We're not. Right? We're not. Our brains aren't designed that way. Our brains are so complex. I mean, the brain literally forgets about things on purpose because it just can't handle all the memories. It just can't. It can handle a lot of memories, your childhood stuff, maybe some of your adult stuff, maybe some of your older stuff, but you're not going to remember every single thing. You're not going to remember everything you ate for a week straight or whatever you ate for your entire life. You're not going to be able to remember that stuff because the mind just doesn't want to or just can't. And so it's important that people realize that we're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. And so there is no problem in conversing because at the end of the day, one day we will understand psychology. We will understand the brain and every single finite detail it does. But until then, we are in this mess of emotions. And it is our job to kind of swim through this jungle of emotions and figure it out. Um, I can't explain sadness and why it happens. I can't explain loneliness and why it happens. I can't explain happiness and why it happens. All I can say is we are only we're only here for a short period. And so while we're here, we should be excited to experience all the emotions that our creator, whether it be God, whether it be aliens, whether it be natural just science, gave us because man, life is real short, bro. It is real short. I mean, the average human lives about 80 years. That's it. 80. 80. That's not long, man. Like don't realize how short 80 years is. It's not long. Like people who were born in the 60s and 70s, they're over 80% done with their lives. 60%, 70% done with their lives. Just like that. Just gone. I mean, we look back on history and we look back on civilizations and we judge civilizations for the things they've done or for the things they believed in. And we like to think, well, we're different now because it's been so long. But it really hasn't, man. Like, unless you're going super far back, it really hasn't been that long, right? Just a couple hundred years ago, our country was founded. And a couple years before that, it was only a couple hundred years, maybe 1,000 years, whatever it was, and then we had the Roman Empire. Like, obviously, the dates might not be perfect, but you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. It's not long, And we have only now just began to understand some of the things about our mind and the things that happens within inside itself. I mean, just 60 years ago, for, you know, being depressed, they would have threw you in a fucking mental institute for being depressed. I mean, we have come so far in such a short amount of time, and there's still a lot to go. I mean, it is something that is complicated. It is something that is interesting, and I think that we will progress as a civilization the more we want to know about this. There is the side of the coin that some people think we shouldn't know, that it's not our right to know, that the emotions that we feel are just that. We just feel them, and we can't change them or stop them. And in a way, I think we can not. I don't think we can stop them, but I do think we can try. I think it's perfectly acceptable to try. Um, but you have to be smart about how you do that, because, again, like I said earlier in the video, blocking them, creating roadblocks for things like sadness or loneliness or happiness or whatever it is you're feeling, just isn't sustainable. It's not. But that's just my outlook. This has been LS Gaming, Mindbender Friday number 2. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys. I hope you guys have found something interesting in this video. I want to hear about your guys' lives down below, what you're going through. Let it down below. Because, man, I can tell you this from right now, from my perspective. Um, there is not a minute that goes by where I am confident in my future. Not a minute, ever. I'm always either dreaming of the future or worried that my life is a disaster and it's never going to change. And there's not a minute that goes by where I wonder if there is just nothing for me in this world and I'm just here to be here. I'm just an NPC put in this story for someone else's amusement. Maybe like a lonely bard on the side of the bar just singing a tune that I don't even know. I'm just singing it because I just was told it one time and I'm just singing along. And everyone else's lives moving around rapidly in the future in the front of me. That is a genuine thought that is for me. Okay, that is a real personal thought. That's what these days are all about. To be aware of these emotions, to communicate with these emotions. Because I can tell you this now, man, talking to myself about these emotions gets me fucking nowhere. All right, gets me nowhere, because you can start talking about these things to yourself, about how you're sad or you're lonely. You can try to talk to yourself, and like within 15 minutes of talking to yourself, you're like, dude, just shut the fuck up, bro. Ain't nobody want to listen to this shit, you depressing ass bitch. And that is a real that's real conversations I've had with myself about this stuff. And so I know there's someone else out there who is dealing with the same exact problem, where you just want to you want to explain these thoughts, you want to work through the emotions and understand why they're happening, how to alter those emotions into how you can make them to your benefit. But you're talking to yourself just doesn't do that, because you just downplay yourself. You're overthinking it. You're underthinking it or overthinking it. Um, and it just gets you nowhere. And so talking to other people helps, because you guys can kind of bounce ideas off each other. So that's exactly why I do Mindbender Friday. So you guys have a safe space. My comments are safe. If I catch anyone bullying anybody for any reason that is unjustified, then I will block you. All right, this is a safe space. All right, that is all my videos can say. People can say whatever they want on my videos. That's fine. But Mindbender Fridays is supposed to be a safe space for everybody. So please let me know down below what you guys think. And if you guys have psychology-based stuff that you want me to focus on and talk about in the video, let me know down below, because I am new to this shit, man. I am new. I mean, I was watching videos this morning and I was like, bro, what is any of this, bro? What is any of this, bro? Um, so it's gonna be rough, but I'm excited for this, and I think it's important to keep fighting. No matter how bad it gets, you have to keep fighting. You just got to. Quitting isn't an answer. All right, that is one stereotypical man thing that people will teach you that I think is justified. Quitting is never an option. I don't care how many battles you lose. Never give up. Ever. It's not worth it. Just isn't. With that being said, love you guys. You're one of a kind. I'll see you guys in the next one.